profit is useful, but profit is not the driver. Profit is just the mechanism. Profit is the flesh, but it is the spirit that moves the person.
Hi, I'm Lukasz and this is Space Talks, the place where you can get inspired by a space sector. If we can mention someone that became a legend during his lifetime, we can safely say it's Robert Zubrin. This name is known to every person interested in space, especially those who heard about the Mars Society. It's an organization from which I come and which over 20 years has been promoting human conquest of Mars. Robert and I talked about Mars, about what awaits us once we not maybe conquer but liberate it, about the Mars Society and the future of this organization, and about what Elon Musk has in common with it. I also asked about Robert's surprising patents and his path into the space sector. I invite you to this fantastic episode dedicated to dreams and passion that will soon lead a man to Mars. Robert, first of all, I would like to say how much I was looking forward to this interview. We have known each other personally for over 12 years. Until now, I have arranged interviews with you in various media. Now I'm walking in the reporter's shoes a little bit, and I must admit that I feel like the first time I listened to you at the Mars Society European Conference in Bergamo, Italy in 2009.
Well, just thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this too.
Okay, so let's start with Mars. There is currently a pretty big hype about it. More rovers land there, there is even a helicopter flying over its surface. But there are also voices of criticism related to the growing problem and threats here on Earth. So tell me why we should continue the exploration of the Red Planet and how we can realize its conquest without calling it Plan B.
Well, first of all, the exploration of Mars stands on its own merit. The taking on the challenge of Mars is justified by the science, by the challenge, and by what it pretends for the human future. Mars. The early Mars was just like the early Earth. The early Earth, life appeared very quickly after it could. Did it do it on Mars? Exploring Mars is going to tell us the truth about the potential prevalence and diversity of life in the universe. That's worth finding out. The challenge itself is very healthy. As societies are like individuals, we grow when we challenge ourselves. We stagnate when we don't. A Humans to Mars program would be a tremendous positive challenge for every society that chooses to take part. You know, the United States in the 1960s, when we had a bold space program, Apollo, doubled our science graduates, in some fields tripled it. I was one of them. Now I'm a minority in that I actually went on to engage in space technology, but the rest of them went off and built Silicon Valley and developed the biotechnology and all these things that have revolutionized the world. Intellectual capital is the basis of progress, and this is a tremendous driver for progress. And then there's the future, okay? And there's two parts to the future. There's the far future, and then there's the near future. Now, the far future is that if we do what we can do in our time, which is establish the first human foothold on Mars, if we make the transition to making humanity multiplanetary, then 300 years from now there will be new nations on Mars, and not only on Mars but on thousands of planets orbiting thousands of stars in this region of the galaxy. New nations with new languages, new literatures, new cultures, innumerable contributions to social thought, to technology, to invention, to everything, and a grand, flourishing, magnificent interstellar culture, and that is something magnificent. And if you have it in your power to create something magnificent, then you should. But there's also something else, and this actually goes to the core of your question, this business about Plan B and so forth and so on. The major threat to humanity today, is not coming from global warming or resource exhaustion. Global warming is real, but resource exhaustion is not. But nevertheless, neither of those were the cause of the great disasters of the 20th century. The great disasters of the 20th century, which certainly Poland was very much in the center of in terms of experiencing them, were caused by something else, which were bad ideas. And in particular, one bad idea that there isn't enough to go around for everyone. And so we need to take it from them. Okay, this is ideology is fundamentally at the root of World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, the Holodomor, all of this, okay, is, Hitler, Germany needs living space. Germany never needed living space. Germany today is much smaller than the Third Reich and has a much larger population, yet has a vastly higher standard of living. Why? They didn't get it by invading other countries, killing people and stealing their land and their cows. They got it through the advance of science and technology, a grand global enterprise that was contributed to by all nations, including, sure, Germans, but also many peoples they were trying to exterminate, and they would have been poorer had they won. Okay, because it's not true that there are limited resources. Resources, in fact, are human creations. It is technology, invention that defines what is and what is not a resource. Land wasn't even a resource until people invented agriculture. Oil wasn't a resource until people invented oil drilling and refining and machines that could run on the product. Uranium wasn't a resource until we invented nuclear power. And Mars has no resources now, but it will have plenty once there are resourceful people there. It will be an engine of invention that will multiply humanity's resources. And if we're not going to Mars to desert the Earth, we're going to Mars to expand the biosphere and expand the capacity of humanity to meet all challenges and to refute this evil conceit that there isn't enough for everyone, so we need to kill them and take their stuff. No, there's plenty for everyone, and there's no need to fight over provinces once you understand that working together we can open up whole planets.
I absolutely agree with you. And what do you think about, you mentioned about cities on Mars, so what do you think the settlement process on Mars will look like? When will the settlements be built, and when will the first cities be built? Is it realistic in my lifetime, or it will be more my children who get to choose whether they want to grow up on Earth or Mars? I'm asking this question because I just starting to read this amazing piece of stories. So when we will conquer the Mars, actually?
Well, we're not going to conquer Mars. We're going to liberate Mars. We're going to set loose Mars's potential to support life and civilization. It's a planet with a civilization waiting to be born. And we're going to midwife that. I think we can have our first human explorers on Mars by the end of this decade. SpaceX is moving very fast right now, and Musk says he's going to reach orbit this year. I don't think so, but maybe next year, and for sure by 2024. And, if starships are regularly flying to orbit by 2024, fully reusable heavy lift launch vehicle, capability of a Saturn V, but 1% of the launch cost. Then the prospect of human to Mars is going to be right there in front of us. We're going to have a new president elected in 2024. And if this is what is happening, if this is what the world looks like, then he or she is going to turn to their advisors and say, look, here's this guy that wants to send people to Mars. He's got this incredible thing that he's built. If we got together with him, could we make this happen? Before the end of my second term? And the answer is going to be yes. Well, will it break our budget? Will it cost trillions of dollars? No. Hundreds of billions? No. We can probably do it within NASA's existing budget. He, needs a lot of extra stuff. He's got the main thing, which is the transportation system, but we're going to need Mars spacesuits, Mars power systems, all sorts of Mars machines for making propellant on Mars, for doing construction on Mars, in digging tunnels on Mars, and greenhouses for Mars, and all this kind of stuff. And we can develop that, and we get together, public-private partnership, we get together with our friends in Europe and Japan and Australia. We can do this, and we'll have humans on Mars by the end of this decade. Now that's explorers. I think we're going to have a decade or so of substantial exploration before we start building a permanent base. So by permanent base, with not 10 people, but 50 people, 100 people by 2040. And then I think you have a base of 100 people, and you'll probably incentivize people to stay extra rotations to save the cost of moving them back and forth. Some people become lifers, and children will be born on Mars. I think we'll see the first children born on Mars by 2050, and that means schools and community theaters, and not just a base, but a village. And by the way, and it won't just be us, because look, even as we speak, there's 5 entrepreneurial companies in China that have gotten investment funding that are trying to develop stuff that look a lot like SpaceX's current Falcon 9s. And once Starship is flying, it won't be long before other people build their equivalents. So there's going to be lots of Starships, and the pressure is going to be on SpaceX to keep improving their product. And there's going to have many players. There isn't just going to be one city on Mars. There's going to be dozens. There'll be many new branches of human civilization started on Mars.
Yeah, that's look promising for us. And once we liberate Mars, as you said, and settle there permanently, what next? What do you think will be our next primary target? Titan? Space stations near the outer planets?
I think after Mars, the next will be the main asteroid belt. And there are materials there that could be substantial resources for space settlement in the form of metals ranging from iron and nickel to platinum and rare earths. But also, frankly, I think that people will settle the asteroids in order to have places they can go where they can make their own worlds. And the mining operations will simply be what they do to financially support it. Just like, there are people in northern Finland who hunt reindeer, but they don't do that because they looked at all the potential businesses they could possibly go into, and they realized the most profitable business opportunities were hunting reindeer. No, they had a certain way of life, and they support it by hunting reindeer, because people don't live to work, they work to live. So the greatest commodity that the asteroids offer, and then the moons of the outer solar system, are freedom. Have a place of your own.
You mentioned Mars, the belt. So actually you are quoting almost the scenario of the Expanse novels and TV series, when you have the Martian states, the belters. This is the future we are talking about?
I think I've been at this a little longer than the writers of the Advance. So I'm not quoting them. They're getting ideas from me and other people, Arthur Clarke, and the people who came before me, and who laid out this vision in the first place. But the Advance, with a number of there's some fantastical elements with the blue stuff and gateways and so on. But in terms of the basic interplanetary situation, is based on somewhat of this grand vision. Although I don't believe that they have Mars settled by a single unified culture, somewhat resembling the Soviet Union. I think Mars is going to be settled by hundreds of independent city-states, and the ones that will grow will be the ones that offer the most freedom. Because why would someone go to Mars unless it offered something better?
Of course. This is one of the ideas here I've read about the self-government. It's an amazing book, really. All of you guys, you have to read this, because this is amazing piece of information about how the Mars will be also ruled, by whom, what's the business will be on Mars. So this is amazing work. Let's move to the actually the organizer of this, because it was a competition made by Mars Society. And what made me the space sector evangelist were also the ideas of the Mars Society organization. Please tell us more about it for the viewers who do little know yet about Mars Society. What are its goals?
Okay, well, the Mars Society happened because I wrote my book, The Case for Mars, in 1996. And it was very successful and translated into a number of languages, including
I have in Polish,
light of interest. And I got 4,000 letters from around the world from people who had read it. And these included engineers at Jet Propulsion Lab and astronauts, but it also included, bankers in Paris and the director of an opera, and I forget which, but it was a big city opera. And yes, a 12-year-old kid in Poland, and firemen in Saskatoon, and widows of war heroes. And they said all sorts of stuff. But behind all their different questions was one major question, which was, how do we make this happen? And I realized that if we could somehow pull these people together, we might have a force that could really help make it happen. And I got together with some friends of mine in what we then called the Mars Underground. These are people like Chris McKay, Karen Stoker, Penny Boston, Tom Meyer. And we looked at this, and it was 4,000 letters. There was a few emails, but it was mostly actually real letters at this time, and with stamps and everything. And it was quite a pile. And decided we'd call a founding convention of a Mars Society. And we did. It was held in Boulder in 1998, and 700 people showed up from around the world, and world leading media showed up, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the BBC, others. And we came out of it with 25 chapters, including one in Poland and many in other major European countries, and also in a variety of countries that you wouldn't expect, Cyprus, so forth. And we got going, and we decided we'd do three things. First was simply broad outreach to spread the vision. Second was to engage in political work to defend the Mars initiatives, such as they were being mounted by the various governments. And we helped expand the American robotic Mars exploration program. We also successfully defended the European Mars Express, which was in danger of being canceled because Germany was about to pull out. We did that. And then the third was projects of our own, of which the most important have been the building of Mars analog research stations, first in the Arctic, then in the American desert. And we've inspired others to build additional ones in Hawaii and in Poland, Austrians, so forth. Now China, and also the rover contests, which we've held, which have involved thousands of young engineers, first in the United States, and that has caused additional contests to be organized, including notably the European Rover Challenge in Poland, which is at this point of equal size to the American contest and draws teams from as far away as South America and Bangladesh.
There is one intriguing issue related to the Mars Society I found in one book. In 2001, its director was chosen a person little experienced then in the space sector called Elon Musk. After that, SpaceX, next steps we can observe today. Wow, sometimes with our breath held. Can we deduce from this that the Mars Society was the driver for Elon's career?
Yeah, it was. And this comes back to our first activity, which spread the vision, which seems to be the most airy and least substantial of the three things compared to a political victory or a rover contest. Just spreading the vision, what can that do? Well, it recruits to the cause new forces, new talent, and you can never tell where that leads. And one of the people we recruited to the cause was Elon Musk. We held a fundraiser in Silicon Valley in 2001. It was a $500 a plate dinner, and somebody sends in $5,000, and we looked at this. Where'd this come from? We were asking for 500. The guy sends $5,000. Who is this? Elon Musk. We'd never heard of him. So we looked him up. We did a little research. We discovered that he was the head or one of the heads of PayPal, and so which we had heard of because it was a nuisance. People were asking if they could pay us by PayPal instead of with checks or credit cards. So, but I decided to put that grievance aside and meet with him separately. And I had like a 2-hour cup of coffee with him, and he had the right people sit next to him at the dinner, and then he came over here to this is my office, and he came here and we met. He gave $100,000 and he joined the board of the Mars Society. He was on our board for a while, but then after a while he said to me, look, I'm not the kind of guy that wants to be part of somebody else's deal. I need to lead my own show. And, frankly, I've already made all the money I could ever use in my life, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I want to do something really important for humanity. And the two ideas that had been caught his attention was humans to Mars, that's making humanity multiplanetary by taking on Mars, and solar energy. That was the other one. And I argued very forcefully for him making Mars his goal, because there were any number of people willing to take on solar energy. I mean, the business case for solar energy is obvious. If you can make it cheap enough to beat fossil fuels, then it will go exponential. And if you can't, it will always remain a sideshow. But there's enough chance for the big win with solar energy that anybody who's got a better idea, what looks like a better idea, will always find investors, and they doesn't need a visionary like Elon Musk to make it happen. If it can happen, it will happen. But humans to Mars, the business case for that is anything but obvious. And you go to Wall Street and say, here's my business plan, humans to Mars. They say, get lost. Okay. So in the end, he decided to do both, and also started the electric car company too. We definitely help recruit Elon Musk to the cause, and many of the people that are making it happen at SpaceX also were recruited to the cause by the Mars Society. There's a lot of founding members and early members of the Mars Society working at SpaceX in prominent positions right now. And the key to SpaceX, there's genius, but there's also passion. Okay, the people at SpaceX, they work twice as hard as people at any other aerospace company for less pay, because they're not in this to buy groceries. They're not in it for the lifestyle. They're in it for the revolution, and that makes all the difference.
So let's talk about future of the Mars Society and the goals for the next decades, because after all, if there is a human landing on Mars, the organization's overreaching goal will be met. So what's then?
Well, no, if there's a human landing on Mars, certainly a major milestone will be met, but then there's the settlement of Mars. And, if you look at some of the most visionary settlement enterprises that were done in the past 400 years, say the Pilgrims coming to Massachusetts, the Mormons going to Utah, the Jews going to Palestine, they were all supported by large home front operations who raised the money to help the actual immigrants go, and to make sure that the home front was covered in the wider world, and politically and so forth. And this is still, for instance, very much the case with Israel today, where the various Jewish organizations help fund people who want to leave Russia or someplace and go to Israel, and don't have the resources to do it. And Mars is the Mars settlement is sure going to want to have a lot of help with a large home front organization here on Earth, and I think that's what we'll do.
That's interesting. In addition to the Mars Society, you are also the author of many books. This is another one I have, and this is actually, Robert, when we first met in 2009. And some exciting patents are also of your own. I know about free field chairs. The other day we talked about carbon dioxide recovery solution that your company developed and that the bearing companies were interested in. Can you reveal what other exciting things Robert Zubrin is behind?
Okay, well, I'm an inventor, and I think I have over 20 patents. The first one was when I was a kid. I invented three-player chess, which, by the way, is still in production in Poland. You can buy three-player chess. It's being manufactured, a handsome wooden version, and it's on sale on the internet. It's manufactured in Poland. The patent has run out, so they don't give me any credit, but you can look up my patent. It's posted on my Wikipedia biography. You can see that that's where that came from. So that's cool. And that's actually where I got the money to buy my first car. Let's see, other things. I'm the co-inventor of the magnetic seal, which is discussed in some of my books. It's a method of space propulsion that uses a magnetic field to deflect the solar wind, and thus the solar wind imparts force to the spacecraft, and you can sail on the solar wind, or you could use it to decelerate interstellar spacecraft that was accelerated to high speeds by whatever means, say a fusion rocket, and or a laser push light sail or something, but you need to slow down at the other side. You could deploy the magnetic sail and make drag against the interstellar plasma, and that will slow you down without the need for propellant. Number of different less visionary space technologies. I also yes, we did invent a machine for extracting the carbon dioxide from fermentation baths and then using it to carbonate the beer, so that companies, especially microbreweries, could get their own CO2 without having to buy it from industrial suppliers. The very large brewing companies already had technology that could do stuff like this. But we created a compact unit that was suitable for microbreweries. We developed technology for capturing liquid natural gases like propane and butane from oil wells, where, like in North Dakota, they're flaring all this stuff and it's a waste of fuel. We could capture it and turn pollution into fuel. And that resulted in the creation of a spin-off company called Pioneer Energy, which makes those machines. We patented a nitrous oxide-based oxygen supply system where you nitrous oxide, N2O, can be stored as a liquid under about 700 pounds pressure at about 4 times the density of compressed air at 3,000 pounds pressure. So you can get 16 times as much fluid in a tank of a given mass. And so this is a potential, and we can dissociate the nitrous oxide, that's the trick, into nitrogen and oxygen, and thus create a breathing gas for use by astronauts or divers, firemen, and many others.
Thank you, Robert. I would like to also ask you a question about the past, because I'm very interested in the young Robert Zubrin. I haven't seen any interview about your path to the space sector. So can you tell us how it started? What pushed you on the course you are today?
Well, it was Sputnik. I was Sputnik, yeah. I was 5 when Sputnik flew. And it's actually the first major world event that I can remember in terms of my own personal experience. And while the adults were all, terrified of Sputnik because it meant the Russians could hit us, to me as a child, it was just terrific. I loved it because, see, I was already reading science fiction, and what Sputnik said to me was that the stories about a spacefaring future were going to be true. It was going to happen. And so I wanted to be part of it. And that was that. And so, started reading about space, and my father got me a telescope, and I did drawings of the moon looking through the eyepiece, and then I started launching rockets and stuff, and making rocket fuel in the basement, which my parents weren't that happy about. But did some other stuff. No, I was all in. And so I learned a great deal of science, and I was 9 when Kennedy made his speech committing us to go to the moon by the end of the decade. And so all during the 60s, it was one thing after another, the astronauts to orbit, 2 astronauts to orbit, spacewalks, probes to Venus and Mars, and then finally the Apollo mission to the moon. And it was 1969, 17. But then it all ground to a halt while I was in college. And, it just wasn't happening. And now I'm first generation in my family to go to college. So the idea of graduate school did not even occur to me at the time. To me, you went to college, you got a trade, you got out. So with the space program studying that, so what can I do and know all this science? So I'll be a science teacher. So I was a science teacher for about 7 years, and taught in a lot of different places. The last place I was teaching was New York City, and and I'm living in northern Manhattan and teaching in Brooklyn and taking the subway every day, an hour and 15 minutes each way, and reading novels about sailing the South Seas and saying, what am I doing here? And then by this time I had heard of this thing called graduate school and decided I was going to just escape from this and go. And I went all the way as far away from New York as I could get. I went to Seattle. And started studying nuclear engineering, and in particular fusion, thermonuclear fusion. Because it seemed to me that was the key revolutionary invention that needed to be made, not only to open space, but to open the future. But while I was doing that, I heard about this group in Boulder, Colorado, grad students, people about my own age, more or less experienced the same history, who had started holding conferences called The Case for Mars, because NASA had abandoned Mars. NASA was saying, oh, we're going to launch space shuttles, we're going to launch satellites, and it's going to be great, you'll have cheap satellites. And what about Mars? And so I went to the third Case for Mars conference. It was 1987. Carl Sagan was there, and so was Thomas Paine, who was the NASA administrator when we landed on the moon, and also the Mars Underground people, and I was in, and I met the people from Martin Marietta, who were doing studies of how you might do human Mars missions, and I made friends with them and eventually got hired by them. So I moved to Denver and became part of the group at Martin Marietta working on design of human Mars missions, and because I had a very broad graduate school background, I had studied everything, not just the required courses. I knew a lot of different fields, and also because I have a rather creative temperament, I was very useful in coming up with some new ideas on how one might design a Mars mission. And it was in that capacity that I, along with another engineer named David Baker, came up with the Mars Direct Plan, which was like a shot heard around the world. It was a totally new approach to humans to Mars that moved it from something in the far future to something in our own time. And I became very well known at that point. And, NASA began to take it seriously. So in 1994, Newsweek, which was running its article on the 25th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, had heard about me, and they had heard that NASA was picking up on my ideas, and they came to interview me, and it was the cover story of Newsweek on the Apollo anniversary. It's the 25th anniversary of our moon landing. Where do we go next? Well, there's now a plan for how we could go to Mars. And so I became, reasonably famous. And my phone rang at my desk at Martin Marietta, and there was a literary agent on the other end. And she says, "Hi, do you realize you have a book here? Have you ever thought of writing a book?" I said, "Yeah, I wrote a book once, but I couldn't get it published." And she said, "Well, what kind of book was it?" And I said, "It was a spy novel." And she said, "Well, have you ever been a spy?" And I said, "No." And she said, "And did you have a literary agent?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, that's why you couldn't get it published. But you are an astronautical engineer, and I am a literary agent, and if you write this book, I will get it published." And so I wrote the book, and it took a lot of work. The case for Mars was actually rejected by 40 publishers before the Free Press at Simon & Schuster just took a chance and decided to go with it. I wish I had saved all the rejection letters. In retrospect, they're so absurd. Why would anybody be interested in a plan for how to go to Mars? Said, "No, we don't want this book. No one's going to buy this book." Well, so wrote the book, and it came out in 96, and it became an international bestseller. It was amazing. And from that came the Mars Society. And also, when it was coming out, I decided I had to leave Martin Marietta because I didn't want to have my book vetted by the public relations experts at the Martin Marietta Corporation, who would make sure that it didn't say anything that would rub anyone the wrong way, in which case the book would be dull. So I started my own company, Pioneer Astronautics, and we're still in business.
So your driver was Sputnik, and as I mentioned initially, my passion for space sector was initiated by the Mars Society, of which I have been member for nearly 20 years right now. So I can safely say, Robert, that I'm of the Zubrin generation. So
thank you.
What advice would you give today to those looking for the path into the space sector?
Well, there are many paths. Okay, first of all, there is the traditional one, which is science and engineering. And if someone has the aptitude for that, then, young person, learn all the science and engineering you can. I mean, you could be an aerospace engineer, you could be, practically almost any kind of engineer, mechanical, electrical, even eventually civil engineers, certainly chemical engineers, are all very useful and can find a place in the space industry. But at this point, there's other avenues as well, which I would name two very important ones, which are business and literary, which you seem to have adopted sort of both of those. By business, what I mean is at this point, what SpaceX has done is not only created a number of very valuable technologies, that they have unleashed an entrepreneurial space revolution. It is now possible to find investment money for private space companies, and not just launch companies or even primarily launch companies, but all sorts of space technologies, space propulsion, spacecraft, space communication technologies, all of these things. There's small companies spotting up everywhere, robotics, that are getting investment funds because Musk, what he's shown is that it's possible for a relatively small entrepreneurial organization to do things that it was previously thought that only the space agencies of major governments could do. And not only that, do it in 1/3 the time at 1/10 the cost, and even do things they thought were impossible. So companies are springing up, and they need not just engineers, they need people with business sense. They need people who know how to raise money and deal with investors and mobilize capital. And then there's the other thing, because again, it is spreading the idea that is driving this. This thing is fundamentally being driven by an idea, okay? Profit is useful, but profit is not the driver. Profit is just the mechanism. Profit is the flesh, but it is the spirit that moves the person. And the Musk didn't start SpaceX to make money. He's going to make money doing it because he can make money doing anything. But believe me, this guy knew plenty of ways to make money that would be a lot easier than starting a rocket company. He could start a .com. Well, that's how he made his first fortune. And with all their problems, .coms are a lot easier to make money with than rocket launch companies. Or he could go into real estate. He could do he could open up a chain of candy stores. He would have made a lot of money much sooner than he made any with SpaceX. No, it's because he's driven by this idea. And, Victor Hugo said, nothing could stop an idea whose time has come. And that's because the idea can recruit to its banners the forces necessary for its victory. But that is only true provided there are messengers, which in a certain sense you might say, artists, poets, writers. British poet Shelley once said, poets are the legislators of mankind, because ideas are upstream of politics, upstream of economics, even upstream of technology. It's what decides what people want to do, and these other things then find a way to make it happen once the idea recruits them. So, if people aren't technical, if there aren't business types, if they are literary types, if they are artistic types, find a way, use your talent, spread the vision.
Thank you, Robert. This was absolutely amazing talk, amazing interview. And I think we inspired, I hope, a lot of people today, because when you hear this once again, it's amazing how your life was until now, and how actually we can go right now to the space sector, because I've heard many times that the golden age of space sector is just now.
Yeah.
It's starting.
It is.
Thank you once again, Robert.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to get these ideas out there.